kind of keep it more chill, because we know you guys are, you're the president of Traversing Tradition.
Yes.
You're kind of having the way you kind of approach Deen is more so how we want to, in the sense that we want to sort of elevate the discourse in general amongst Muslims, because I think for us growing up in the West, are you born in America? I know you're based in America. Were you born there and stuff?
Yeah. I was born and raised in America. I've been here my entire life.
Alhamdulillah. So like for us, it's like, navigating issues of the West and being Muslims in the West. It's I guess confusing times, right? Like you're not sure what to do. So I guess even with I assume that what's your background? Sorry, like are you like from Desi background?
Yeah. My family's Indian American. So both my parents come from India. But actually, it's funny. My dad was basically raised here since he was like 6 months old. So like his Urdu is very bad. For example, he was raised in the South, in the southern part of the United States. So it wasn't like a typical Desi upbringing, but I mean, yeah, that's my background basically. Both from northern India.
So pretty much, I guess, with your parents' generation, they were like essentially almost like the first sort of generation to come. Like, because for me, it's like the same thing where my dad, he moved to Australia, I think 1980-ish. Yes, and so, I don't know, there seems to, like, we have, like, with Bengalis, there's a bit of back history with 1971 and nationalism,
Yeah,
and,
of course.
kind of Pakistan kind of betrayed us, so, we can't rely on religious folks. Like, it's kind of that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah. So, like, the religious folks sort of let us down, because, anyways, so they don't have that kind of, they do, the traditional in the sense, they're not, like, full, like, kafirat going around partying and clubbing, right? In a response, they still have those traditional values. They look to Islam in a way to kind of help their I guess internal state, but that's all they see. But in the sense, they move to the West simply for monetary reasons, which I can't really blame them. I used to be like, there's like I think there's a Quranic ayah or something, like if you move out of the lands for the sake of, like, for just moving out, like there's no hasanat or something, but if you do it for the sake of Allah or something, like there's barakah in it. But
yeah.
Anyway, so when I was like Salafi, I was like, there's no barakah in moving to the West, but but anyways, obviously, like from their perspective, if you kind of get an understanding of their reality, right, you kind of be like, yeah, fair enough, like the situation is terrible in Bangladesh, you got an opportunity in Australia, then obviously it makes sense. But in the sense, they weren't like religious, so I was kind of had to navigate the schooling system here. My parents weren't really too aware of what was going on, in the sense of what we had to go through. And alhamdulillah, I guess I became more into Deen about maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I got actually connected with Josh through MSAs and being with part of the boys. And alhamdulillah, even in high school, like I was always sort of practicing, in the sense that I was with Muslim guys, but practicing, but not really. I wouldn't say I wasn't practicing, but I wouldn't say I was practicing either. I was just kind of in the middle, just kind of with going the flow. But alhamdulillah, you kind of get into Deen, then you kind of understand reality more, then you kind of question things, and you're less like, man, we're in such a wreck, you know, like we have to do something. So we're in a terrible state as a ummah. So alhamdulillah, me and Josh tried starting our Boys in the Cave. Josh, he's a co-founder, and I guess why I'm saying this spiel, and the audience might be thinking, is this a solo podcast? But reason why I'm giving this kind of background is, like, for you, Zain, I feel like you're kind of doing the same thing, but from faraway lands of America, in the sense that you probably went through what we're going through. If you go through your Twitter, you're a bit of a troll, but it's pretty funny because you're Dini as well. So it's good to have those kind of characters as well. You get what I mean? And alhamdulillah, you're doing amazing works with Traversing Tradition and stuff. So I feel, I guess you can kind of relate to us in a certain degree. Would you say?
Alhamdulillah. I mean, obviously, like every person's experience is going to be a little bit different depending on who you're coming across. But I mean, from a Western sense, you kind of get that, like coming from a immigrant background specifically, there are a lot of similarities. Like your parents don't really know what's really happening. They haven't experienced this to the same degree that you have. And even if it is, if you're coming from a non-immigrant background where your parents were actually raised here, times are changing like in ridiculous waves. Like we see, like there's a big disconnect between ages, between people who are even from like as the difference between generations like millennials and Generation Z, for example. You see like really big difference in either political thought and the type of culture that they're interested in, the um, just the different trends that are being accepted by these different people. So um, but yeah, especially from an immigrant background, because now you're removing another aspect from, I guess, their framework of thinking. So they don't really know what their kids are going through. It might be very difficult to relate to them. They're used to being brought up in an area mostly around other Muslims. Um, Whereas over here, obviously, the majority of the people around you are non-Muslim. So yeah, it's a very different experience, and I can definitely relate to that. And I mean, alhamdulillah, I mean this podcast. I love the name, by the way, Boys in the Cave. Um, but like, yeah, you see a lot of different, and alhamdulillah, it's really upbringing to see that too. That we have, not just ourselves at Traversing Tradition or you guys over here, but a lot of other like younger Muslims who are active in the West, trying to do different things, trying to basically bring about some type of change, trying to affect some type of positive reaction in their communities. So I find that very uplifting to be around these types of people too. So alhamdulillah, and I really appreciate you guys bringing me on, by the way.
Yeah, no problem at all, bro. Just to dive straight into your project there, Traversing Tradition. So to be completely honest, I wasn't prepared for the podcast. So I think last night, Tanzim, he's like, bro, this guy's pretty big. Check out his website. And do you know how most blog posts are sort of...
to be fair, I arranged this at very last minute. It was like overstand too. Like, shout out to Ibrahim. I kind of... Yeah, I just messaged him like, you got any folks?
Yeah, like most Muslim blog posts, they have like 15 viewers or readers, and they're pretty like, they're not very well kept up. But I looked at your website, and it was so well done, and there was such a breadth of topics. Not only that, but there was constant engagement and stuff. People were commenting and having like back and forths in the comments, and you have so many contributors as well. I was like, wow, there are all these intellectual people across, I guess, the UK and America. I was like, this is something I've been looking for a long time, but I've never actually found to that level. And I was like, where have I been the past year and a half that I didn't even know about you guys? I guess I'm not on Twitter as much as Tanzim, so he definitely... Yeah,
like I'm a bit involved in Muslim Twitter. Like Josh is on Twitter, but not to the degree
not too
that
much,
I am.
Yeah.
So that's why I already know about you guys for a while. So yeah, that's why, yeah.
Yeah, bro, like alhamdulillah, like as a liberal arts student as well, I graduated with a double major, history and philosophy as well. It's hard to find that sort of textual depth in a lot of the articles. For example, I was reading just before the podcast started, I was reading the one about the devil,
yes,
that Ibrahim Ali wrote. Yeah, that was amazing. I was like, that's like a textual deep dive into where our popular culture idea of the devil came about, and some of the other ones as well about the movie reviews as well, the book reviews. It's weird how that you have such a intellectual engagement from these contributors around the world. I just wanted you to walk us sort of through how you came to this project and where you sort of get your creators from, and like the sort of like the birthplace of all that. How did it come about?
Yeah, the birthplace is actually Twitter, of all the places. I mean, we often talk about Muslim Twitter being a cesspool, and Muslim Twitter being a very cancerous place, and a place where it's just filled with arguments and zeal, basically. But I think one of the benefits of Twitter as a website, and the reason why that, despite everyone always criticizing the Muslims on Twitter, that they're still on it and still contributing to it, is that you find it's very easy to find a group of people that you can not only get along with on like a more social level, but also on an intellectual level. Getting along with people, finding people who you have common groundwork. I mean, a lot of the people who are on like Muslim Twitter, they come from communities where either there's not like a lot of, at least among the practicing side of things, they don't find a lot of practicing people around them. They might be looking for friends who are more either Islamically literate, more friends who are who'd encourage them to be more practicing, to give them reminders, whatever it might be, and to have discussions. And that's kind of how Traversing Tradition spawned. It actually came out of a group chat where a lot of these things were being discussed, where a lot of these ideas, like we were talking about politics all the time, we were talking about philosophy, we were talking about pop culture, we were talking about all different kinds of topics, and through an Islamic lens, because every single person who was involved with that was either like a student of knowledge, actively a student of knowledge, someone who, you know, people in college, going through university, um, basically very like-minded people in terms of their dedication to the religion, but also differing in opinion. So you'd have like arguments coming about too. So then one time, one person, he actually ended up not joining the team, just because of how busy he was. He's like, you know, you guys are always talking, you're always arguing, you're always, you know, talking about how we should do something good for the community. Why don't you guys just start a blog and start putting these ideas to work? So, and then a few people decided to take initiative, and that's basically like the birth of Traversing's tradition, how we came about. A lot of like-minded people in terms of their commitment to the religion, with backgrounds in liberal arts, in STEM, in generally young. So our age range is, you know, among 20-year-olds, from our writers to our board members, things like that. So uh, basically, it was just like a coming together of that, and then that was our idea, is that, you know, we have all these issues going on in the West, you know, as that we're noticing as active Muslim Americans, as Muslims in the UK. Um, so how are we going to basically highlight these things? How are we going to look through them? And we decided, obviously, the best way to do that is through an Islamic lens. Something that we have, you know, we can reference, something that we have access to, because in general, our team has like a very good network of scholars in their locale, that we oftentimes try to reference, but also background within learning the Islamic tradition. So basically, like looking through the West, looking through modernity through this Islamic worldview, and how do we kind of navigate that? Um, so that's basically like how it came about.
Definitely, I definitely see that perspective. Even in your tagline, so it's a critical examination of modernity through an Islamic lens. So, regardless of your engagement with modernity per se, you have that Islamic basis that you're viewing everything from. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Yes. So it's a wholehearted sort of commitment to, I guess, Orthodox Islam above and beyond, like which informs how you engage with all your material, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That's
good.
Yeah, if like you mentioned Twitter at the beginning, right? Because I try to be sort of active on Twitter. I don't know why, but I kind of enjoy the fights, to be honest. But that's why I'm there.
You learn a lot from them. You learn a lot from them. So
that's definitely true. Like with me, right? I think I kind of like the example I like to use is, for example, people they use not Muzmatch. What's the other one? Where
Minder,
yeah. Minder's pretty bad, yeah. So people are like, I have brothers that I know well that are, you know, trying to get married and stuff, and they try to use these dating apps. It's like Minder's like, they try to say that's like the worst one out of all of them, because everyone's just trying to sleep with each other.
Yeah.
In that sense. So it's like you can use that app to do that. And people are like, there are actually like, you know, Muslims that are practicing impious and stuff. They're trying to get married. So,
yeah,
or
absolutely.
you can use Minder to find, you know, your perfect wife, right?
For sure.
But it's the same thing with Twitter. Like people, I like, you know, I've heard many people, like I know Dr. Shadi, he talks about all the time how Twitter is a cesspool. Many people in the kind of the figureheads of the Muslim Twitter, you can say, they're always talking about how it's a cesspool, but at the same time, it's really easy to block that noise. You get what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because alhamdulillah, even with all that kind of noise, you can easily spot the more knowledgeable, well-rounded, intellectual, intelligent brothers. And you just like I don't follow that many people, but I follow these like specific people that on my timeline, it's always them, and it's always their threads are very insightful and thought-provoking. And I even end up getting to know them well. You know, we message offline and
absolutely.
stuff. It kind of builds connections, and I guess like from there you kind of build bridges with intellectual people around the world, and it's kind of building that network. So I've never really seen Twitter as a cesspool. Like, yeah, I know those kind of fights do pop up on your timeline, and it's fun to read sometimes. but like, I think there's a lot more good that kind of comes out of it. Like I don't see the point of kind of making a fuss over some dude called you a kafir or whatever, some random, like for saying something, you know, that they kind of misinterpret or whatever, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But because it seems like with Traversing Tradition, you've got like the more intellectual, intelligent people within even the Twitter sphere. Like they have big followings on Twitter, and you kind of got them together. and it's just, you've done amazing works. So I guess like that's, your project is kind of a fruits of Muslim Twitter. You get what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
alhamdulillah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we complain about it all the time, but we've seen a lot of beautiful things come out of it. I mean, like you mentioned Dr. Shadi earlier, but I mean, he's still on there and he's still providing very good content on that website.
Which is the irony.
Yeah, exactly. So you have, and like all these scholars who are on it and are pretty accessible on it, being able to communicate with the masses. I mean, it's the same thing with like pop culture and celebrity culture. Like Twitter kind of gave that medium to people to like talk directly to their celebrity. Like if they're like a famous basketball player, a pop star, whatever it might be, if they're, active and engaging or whatever it might be. But with Muslims, it really gives an avenue to communicate with people of knowledge, with like-minded people. And it ends up being like a birthplace for a lot of great things. And alhamdulillah, traversing tradition is one of them.
Yeah, bro. I wanted to ask about your personal background. Are you currently studying at university as well?
So I finished my undergrad actually. I finished a degree in political science back in 2018. I'm currently applying for a master's program though.
Right. Okay. So I wasn't too sure if you were more of an Islamic student of knowledge or.
No, he is. You are, right?
Okay, on the side.
That is what,
yeah.
On the side. Okay. So you just learn with your local shuyukh and scholars as well?
Either whether it be classes online or with whatever local scholars that I can, like studying. We have a few other team members who are like more entrenched in it. Either they're like in a Darul Uloom, for example, or like in like some type of full-time program. For myself, not like a full-time program. It's like just sitting with a scholar, like with a few other people, consistently over like over the past like 2 years.
Yeah, no, I was finding, because you said you did political science, a lot of the cool kind of folks on Muslim Twitter, they're all done political science. So I'm like, man, I wish like I did it as
I'm
well.
not one of those people. So, but yeah, I get what you mean. There are a lot of like really brilliant minds and really great people who have that background as well.
Yeah, whenever I'm on Twitter, I judge people by their tagline. It's like
If it says
Bachelor of what? BPSC, then you know it's serious. Yeah.
You gotta follow them, and they have a decent following as well.
Yeah,
like, this guy's serious. Yeah.
I mean, in America, or at least in American universities, the what do you call it? The acronym for political science is POS, which isn't a very friendly acronym. So
POS, yeah,
has a bit of a bad connotation. So.
Oh, really? As in people sort of like the fact that you'll be like a lefty sort of thing? What do you mean bad connotation?
It's like a curse word, like POS, piece of.
Right. I get you.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you meant like.
Alhamdulillah, we're pretty pious brothers at Boys in the Cave. We don't pick up on this.
Mashallah, you guys are very clean. You don't know these things. That's very good.
I wanted to ask, so you started, say, early to mid 2018 with Traversing Tradition? Is that right?
So I was there since the beginning. I'm one of the founders. So yeah, early 2018, February 2018. We're about to hit 2 years later in the month.
What's the sort of traction you've gained at that time, the sort of reception? Is it reaching across the world? Do you look at the figures and stuff?
Yeah.
How's it going?
So we have seen growth over the past 2 years. Worldwide. I mean, the majority of our readership comes from the United States, just by nature of a lot of our writers are American. The articles are in English. We're catering to a Western crowd, and America has a very large population. But and like since most of our writers are American, like our following starts to see us, retweeting tradition articles, and they start reading it. But we've seen growth worldwide, specifically in like individual readers. Like there's like a whole bunch of stats that some of them go over my head, to be honest. Like I don't have a statistics background, but among the basic stats, I mean, especially lately as we've been getting more and more consistent articles, where we have at least one every week. We're seeing like a lot more people engaging with it, and it's because it's a variety of different topics. So it's not like the same thing being beaten over the head, like the same topic. It's not like political articles for like 8 straight weeks. We're seeing movie reviews, book reviews. We're seeing comments on political ideology, philosophical articles about tasawwuf, various different things, which I think really helps out. And I mean, we're alhamdulillah, I think we're looking to expand a little bit more, but so far I've liked the growth that we've seen, and it's been really great to see it. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, it's really good. Especially, I feel like with a blog, it's sort of like it's not the age of blogs anymore. If you know what I mean. Maybe it was a thing early 2010s, but no one reads anymore. So that's a fact. So that's why podcasts have sort of taken the charge. I guess everyone listens to podcasts now. So it's more of a niche sort of thing, as in you have to be more of a bookish person who'll put your time into actually reading, or you have to have a particular interest in that field. And we've had many initiatives in Sydney that I tried to be a part of, where you want to start a blog post with regular articles and stuff, but none of them really take off because it's just doesn't have the viewership that you would expect, I guess. And then also, just to find suitable contributors, it's hard to sort of to source them from your own community. So it's the fact that you guys have that sort of global reach. Your contributors are global as well, right? So UK and US?
And a few from other places too. We've had people write articles from Egypt. We've had people write articles from India. We've had people write articles from Tunisia. So it is pretty open as to who we kind of accept, just as long as it's fulfilling the mission and it's within like our framework. I mean, we've published articles of where maybe like a lot of our team members disagreed with what it was being said, but I mean, it was still like a palatable argument. It was still looking through it. It was still looking at the issue with an Islamic lens. So we're getting a lot of diversity, not just in nationality or ethnicity or whatever it might be, but also diversity in thought, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah, 100%. I saw one of the taglines. It was like, if you don't agree with what's been published, that's cool. Write a rebuttal.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can't beat us, join us.
Yeah, we've invited people who have expressed disagreement with some of our posts before. Like they expressed like, hey, I really didn't think this was a really good article, just in terms of like the argument that it was making, and we're like, okay, we invite you, come through. The contribution link is open. Feel free to write something, and we'll work with you and we'll publish it.
That's how a lot of the big American editorials do it as well. Like, Salon, for example, if they publish rebuttal pieces as well. So say they publish a big hit piece, someone can reply to that and they'll publish that as well. So I guess that's a good direction to take in terms of like accepting criticism. I guess it's sort of in league with some of the big magazines out there.
I think even in our community, it's like a big thing where we're kind of in our own bubbles, and even in Ahl Sunnah, you got the Tabligis, for example, HT there, Sufis on one camp, all these sort of people that are on kind of different ends of the spectrum, and they aren't willing to kind of collaborate. They're kind of in their own bubble. So when it comes to perhaps, I don't know, doing initiatives or something, it's always very divisive in that sense. So, and like, I guess for us, I don't know if it's a thing where we're just sort of grown up here and in the West, and we're experiencing life a bit differently. But I guess even with Boys in the Cave, like we've had pretty much people from on that are in they exhibit different political views on, both left or right, for example. But at the same time, we can all, agree that we're all Ahl Sunnah. So it's all about getting ideas on the table, right? And I think that's the way forward, essentially, because if we're still kind of in our own groups, in our own circles, and kind of only seeing things from one way, like even for me, like I never really sort of joined HT. I was sort of in the midst of HT and stuff. So I kind of knew where they were coming from, their perspectives, and their reading of the Seerah compared to, for example, Sufi's reading of the Seerah is like two different things. You get what I mean? So it's about like, sometimes you just have to be exposed to that and see, what can you take, what can't you, what do you agree, what you disagree. And even with Tanzimi Islami is a different approach to the Seerah, and that kind of forms their political views, because a lot of people, they utilize the Seerah in a way where, okay, I'm going to extrapolate things from the Seerah and kind of apply it in this modern context. How should I do it? Should I learn from how Rasul did it? And you'll see varying perspectives. So it's like, okay, you have to sift through it. But if everyone's in their own bubble and kind of not bringing the issues to light or bring their perspectives in a sort of platform and contest with it, then, it becomes harder. So I guess even for us Boys in the Cave with you guys, that's essentially the way forward. Like, what's
Yeah.
your sort of take on that in general from your perspective?
I mean,
as
I
well?
think it's very important to be challenged, even if you believe that what your idea or what your group or whatever it might be, your uh, ideology, if you think you're correct, it really should be no issue to engage with other people who might have a disagreement with you if you're that confident in it. Um, and it's really important that we do get challenged because it makes us think about our own, like, why are we doing this? Why are we a part of this? Why are we doing what we're doing? And then also not just focusing on like the differences, but focusing on focusing on the positives, focusing on what brings us together. um I think it's very important to we get caught up a lot in the differences. We get a lot really caught up in where we disagree and almost like takfir each other over it. um but it's really important to see that we as Muslims in the West, we have a very similar goal in pleasing Allah Azza wa Jal, and attaining paradise, attaining His mercy. So, and there's just different, you're seeing different methods of going about it. So it's really good to pick each other's brain about it. I mean, we take the good from wherever we see it. So if another Muslim has a different idea, it might be really good for us to hear what he or she has to say, because we can apply it in our own sense. We can work together in it. We can come to an agreement on it. We don't have to agree about everything. Everyone's not going to agree about everything, and we've seen that through the past 1400 years. But it is important to sit at the table and have an agreement. And I think that's why being in the West, as Muslims, and specifically young Muslims in either a college setting or a university setting, it's really important that we do that, just because that we're coming into an area that's getting people from all over the world with different ideologies, with different schools of thought, whether it comes to fiqh, whether it comes to aqidah, whether it comes to tasawwuf, or if they're not even Sufi oriented, different political ideologies, different, coming from all over the place, and we're all happen to be going to the same thing, but we're still praying Dhuhr together. We're still getting together, we're still having conversation, and we can get along on that. And I think it's really important, and especially when we're talking about like these big ideas, either politically or philosophically, or looking at the issues within the West. I think it's really important to take from each other, no matter how different it might be. But I mean, obviously you have like certain cutoff points when it comes to it. I mean, people are proposing like ridiculous things, but the vast majority of the time, it's nothing that we can cancel each other or should cancel each other over.
So I guess you guys then would have, like, as a part of your sort of ethos with the blog, you would be anti the sort of modernist reformist approach to, I don't know, the deen, I guess. You know how on universities is sort of like a festering ground for that sort of thing, I guess, in the US, where I don't know
about the reality though in America, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's
like as in,
for us it's a bit more chill, but I don't know if
as in, like, do you know, like,
Yeah.
the liberal Muslim, the modernist Muslim, like that stereotype, is that a thing that you guys actually have to like battle against?
To be quite honest, it's a little bit exaggerated. I mean, some of the jokes are funny. I'll like
Yeah.
some of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Like-
memes are good.
yeah,
You see the boomer
of
memes?
course.
Yeah, bro. But based on how much some of you like traditional guys hate them, I think they're everywhere. Like the reformers, the modernist, the liberal Muslims that
The
are
thing
like.
is, there's very few of them, but they're very loud. So and not just that, they often find, just because of the reality of Muslims in the West, is that we're kind of confused about who's qualified to say what. Like, I mean, it's a lot of the Muslims are coming with not like an ilmi background. They're not coming with and even an average level of Islamic literacy, and then they're going to college, and then they see someone at the podium giving a talk. He has a kufi on and he has a scruffy beard, so he must be Shaykhul Islam. That's not necessarily. You kind of have like people are confused about who is qualified to say what. So some people get put on a pedestal, but I think in general, and this is also, it very much depends on the community, right? I grew up in a community where I didn't see any of this stuff. My community over here in Phoenix, Arizona, alhamdulillah, They've been I haven't like been exposed to a lot of this stuff. I mean, I should be aware because inevitably it might happen in a few years. But when I was in university in the MSA, we really did not have to deal with a lot of these like very extreme liberal, like this pushing from extreme liberal ideology. It was something, alhamdulillah, that we didn't have to experience. But other communities, they have to experience it all the time, just because of who happens to be there, who is. So I mean, it is. I do believe it is it is an issue, and I think it is a threat that we should consider. But it is a bit overblown. Like, it's not the majority of the Muslims in the community are not like these guys.
Yeah, but like a lot of the media and sort of like social media.
Yeah, social media, man, just made it louder for them.
The consumption I have is usually people from like the Bay Area or from New York or Chicago or something. So I guess they have more of those issues there in a way.
So the thing with those communities specifically, sorry for interrupting you, it's a very large Muslim population in those areas. So you have cities like Chicago in the Bay Area, New York, Houston, for example. So they have a really large sample size.
I heard Chicago's a caliphate or something.
Yeah.
Or, like with the amount
of we call it Chicago Sharif actually as a joke, but it honestly might be like they have like traditional like scholars training there who are teaching there. The halal restaurants are fantastic. You just have a lot of Muslims throughout that entire area. Beautiful masajid. It's a really nice community. I had the chance to be there over the past summer for a few weeks.
Oh, that's great. So Chicago is sort of one of the most well-preserved areas in America, you could say.
Yeah, for the Muslim community, definitely.
Yep. I get you. I wanted to ask, there's a particular figure. So I'm not on Twitter as much because it just fell off my academic sort of high horse after finishing liberal arts, but I'm on Instagram a lot because that's easier consumption, really brain dead. But a figure there that's really doing a lot of good work. I don't know if you've heard of him, Saleh Basir.
I've heard the name. I'm not on Instagram, so I can't comment much on it.
You're not on Instagram, so
I have heard his name.
So he's really good in that in Instagram stories, he answers people's questions, like even like fiqh wise or about like general questions people have, like are all non-Muslims going to hell, etc. And he's just really accessible. And he's from the Bay Area, I think.
Oh, really?
And he's also he's done a few years in the I don't know what the place is. Is it a Darul Uloom in Azadville, South Africa?
Yes,
it's one of those.
He
was there for 5-6 years and he's doing, I think, some sort of arts in the Bay Area as well. But he's one of those figures that I saw as like amazingly accessible and really relatable for the young people. They ask him any question and he responds, and he gives you an overview of why sort of what liberal Muslims say and how to go rebut that, for example. So he's sort of what you guys are doing, but on a popular platform. Because he gets like thousands of views, like 10,000 plus, and people just come to him with questions. Inshallah. And you guys are sort of the more intellectual side of it, I guess, on the blog.
Like, I guess we're all kind of tapping into different areas of like culture, pop culture, and trying to utilize that to get the message of Deen across. Like, even with me, because TikTok's kind of blowing up right now, and I was seeing, bro, like, there's so much Muslim content. Like, alhamdulillah, you flick on, I try not using it as kind of fitna. There's like random half naked women dancing around like half the time, but there's some really good but if you follow the right people,
isn't that just the West in general?
That's actually true, right?
Continue.
Instagram everywhere, but TikTok's even worse, but they're like in your face. But anyways, you can just follow the right people and kind of it's like using a platform for however, you can just follow the right people and not see it. So if you follow like some of the Muslim guys as well on it, what they try to do, they try to like make sort of jokes and sort of make relatable videos, but put an Islamic kind of coding to it. So like, I don't know, struggles of, I don't know, Ramadan or fasting or common mistakes that Muslims do in prayer, or like all these like things where like, because so many non-Muslims are using the platform just to be exposed to, and it's like, oh wow, this is so relatable, So I guess even on platform like TikTok, and Josh was mentioning about Instagram, like I guess as Muslims, what we're trying to do is just trying to utilize every
For sure.
platform. So for us, it's like more podcasting, and for you guys, obviously with the blog as well, and also on Twitter. So at the end of the day, it's alhamdulillah, it's good to see like different parts, different youth from around the world just trying to utilize different mediums in order to sort of bring back the Khilafah essentially. Bring Islam, to the masses essentially in a more relatable sense. Like even I know, like I was hearing the other day, someone was telling me like Spain has a big, lot of reverts. There's a lot of conversions happening in Spain as well. Yeah, it's interesting. So, and it's a lot through like social media and getting engaged with like the history and people being aware of more of that as well. So all these little things, man, it's just doing our role, right? And I guess that's what you're doing from your end as well.
I mean, we're also trying to expand into different areas. I mean, for the most part, we've kept our base on Twitter. But I mean, I think there's a lot more potential outside of Twitter as well. I mean, we're on Facebook and we're on Instagram, but it's just a matter of like utilizing those sites for what they're good for, right? They have different functions and things like that. So, and it's beautiful to see other Muslims doing it, because I mean, Muslims are on it regardless. Like, where we make up like 25% of the world, so we're gonna be on social media. We're gonna be active on it, and to see people, using it for a beneficial way, as a beneficial tool. I mean, even like a lot of these Muslim TikTokers, they're like high schoolers. I mean, everyone's always lamenting, oh, the state of the youth, but I mean, there's a lot of like there's a big population of Muslims who care about their religion still and love their religion, and want to promote it in a good way and want to practice it. So to see that, it's very uplifting.
Do you think like even like it's interesting brought up the youth, right? Yeah, and I hear that a lot. Like I said, the youth from the kind of older generations that are more very religious. They tend to sort of berate the younger generation. My sort of like I want to get your thoughts as well, but
For sure.
I'm rather from the perspective of it's the older generation's fault, in the sense that why I say that is, firstly, like they gave birth to us, so they kind of have the responsibility to nurture us in the right way. But I understand from their context, coming from, we touched more at the beginning of the episode, where they come from from I don't know, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. They come here, they kind of get by. They'll never really become part of the West, simply because, I don't know, the way they speak, there's an accent, so it's harder for them to get jobs. So they will never really be in tune with pop culture here, for example, never relate to that level. So when the kids are born and stuff, they're just kind of thrown into high school, and they actually have no idea what the kids are enduring, right? Like I can be straight up about this. In high school, like, people I knew, they were doing drugs in the bathrooms. Yeah. They were doing weed. This is something I experienced, right? So is that, like, my parents even fathom that? Probably not. They probably still don't know. Not that I'm hiding it from them, right?
Yeah.
But they're just like, they can't fathom that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of, and then, women, if you're in a co-ed school, the fitna is real and this and that, and you have those sort of situations as well. So at the end of the day, it's like if the parents sort of took care and really understood the situation or the environment that they're in the West specifically, they would probably give a more priority of putting the child in good circles, good areas, or making sure the kids are having that sort of emotional intelligence as well, in the sense that they're not forcing Islam down your throat. They're kind of fostering a good environment for the kids to be laid back and chill and have fun, but also embody Islamic principles. You know what I mean? And I feel that that's like a massive thing that's like missing completely from what I've kind of experienced in Sydney. So, well, what's the sort of take on that? Would you say it's kind of on the same, we're on the sort of same boat when it comes to your experiences, perhaps, with this in America?
Yeah. Within America, I mean, I want to highlight a key phrase that you said there. It was emotional intelligence. That's something very lacking in the Muslim community from what I've seen. Actually the master's program I'm trying to apply for is a mental health related field. So I have like a background in that as well. And I've been focusing a lot on that in my studies in undergrad and outside of that. But in regards to the Muslim community and like the elder generation, I mean, of course, we have to give props to where they deserve it, right? Our parents and grandparents' generation who came here really built up the institutions that we're now partaking in, and really helped out. They did put a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears into making those institutions. But at the same time, now we have to see there has been it seems like there's a drop off in terms of how committed their kids are in comparison to them, and so that you do have to take a look at that. So I was actually at this gathering once. I was probably maybe the second youngest person there. It was mostly Arabs, but my community is mostly an Arab community, so I've grown up around them a lot. But I see this a lot in the Desi community too. But it was like everyone was sitting down. It was basically like this type of meeting to kind of like see what's wrong with the community, and over and over and over and over again, it was just people lamenting about the youth, the state of the youth, the state of the kids. These kids are all stupid. All they're doing is playing Fortnite. All they're doing is doing drugs, things like that. But not my kids. My kids aren't doing drugs, but all the other kids are doing drugs. Basically,
The kids are probably doing all that stuff low key. They're just really good at hiding
yeah,
it.
exactly. Like you have the Hafaz doing like crazy stuff, but the parents don't believe it because, oh, my kid's a Hafiz. He has the perfection of character. He can't do anything wrong, you know? I think just number one, understanding that, hey, it's a struggle here, especially like when you're being raised here, your kids are having an identity crisis about like what their nationality is. They're having an identity crisis about where their loyalties lie. If you're in America, right, the patriotism in America is like a whole nother level. So if you're not, it really is a lot of times, if you're not with us, you're against us. That's what it feels like for a lot of kids, especially in like the southern part of the country.
Yeah, sorry, bro. Just to pause on that, I feel like, just a side note here, I feel like the pop culture and sense of nationalism in America is just so all-consuming.
Oh yeah,
in a way.
absolutely.
Like if you're not a part of the regular lifestyle that everyone has, I don't know, going to NBA, NFL games, like being a part of your school, I don't know, the extracurricular activities at your school, like everyone does everything a particular way. And it feels like it's so consuming. And like Americans as well, like say they would hang a flag of America in their gym or like in their home, whereas Australians don't really do that. Like for us, it's sort of like.
No, I think there is those sentiments still there. I think.
No, but America is like a regular thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it
whereas
might be
Australia,
a bit, we still have it though.
To be honest, we couldn't care less where we lived. It's just a nice western city. You get what I mean? Like, I don't care about Australia. I really couldn't care less. Like, it gives me an accent. That's the one thing. But like the whole
flex the privilege.
The whole ideal of Australia, like how it lives in my heart. Like Americans have a sense of that, like a pride, but we really don't.
I mean, so nationalism is one hell of a drug wherever you're from, but American nationalism is the equivalent of 80 shots of heroin. It's like I was commenting about this today. So exactly, like it was with the Super Bowl, specifically with nationalism, the amount of military propaganda that's within it is quite it's very agitating for someone who's someone who is anti the US military, but it's consuming. It's like the only bipartisan issue is support the troops almost, and Israel, of course, like between like the right wing and the left wing in the United States. You really have like for example, like every morning we'd have to do the Pledge of Allegiance in high school, right? Every morning, every morning, every day.
Bro, we never had that.
We only had it like an assembly. We had to sing the Australian.
That was once a week.
Australian
do the national anthem, and then like if it was like some American holiday, we'd get like a load of propaganda. And keep in mind, I went to a very small school. It was a public school, but it was run by Muslims too. So like, because it was a public school, they had to do this. It's by law in my state, you had to have an American flag hanging in every single classroom, and you had to have the Constitution on the wall too. So not just the American flag, but a copy of the Constitution like printed on the wall.
Is that most southern states or something?
You'll probably find it more often in southern states, but it's all over. Like American national. I mean, it's not. I mean, American exceptionalism is everywhere, including the North and the West Coast. But you'll see, like, you'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, like, needing to be recited every morning. It's a national pastime. It's like the American wird.
it's a national. It's so even in New York
Oh
and
yeah,
San
absolutely,
Francisco, they have to
absolutely.
do that. The kids.
That's
Wow,
actually
I
that's
did.
like unthinkable
We
here.
didn't even know that.
We didn't even,
Yeah,
yeah, I had no idea,
That's
and
crazy.
that's crazy. That actually reflects, like, I guess the context. Even though we're in the West, bro, it's like
Yeah,
different.
for sure.
Like
It's
we come
very
from different. I'll
different.
be like,
yeah. That's sort of what I was getting at. That Americans are so consumed into the sense of the national, whether it's not explicitly like, "Oh, I'm a patriot," but through your pastimes, through
For
the
sure.
Super Bowl, through your, I don't know, the flag hanging like
Yeah.
everywhere you go, in a gym, in a classroom. That all of
you know, what's also
that makes it hard to escape in
You know
a way.
what's also crazy? It's like they've indoctrinated to the point where, for example, if us Muslims were doing the Shahada flag, would be seen as ISIS terrorists
of
straight
course.
away. Even though the Americans are doing it for like every
For sure.
classroom, it doesn't like it was just so normalized that it doesn't like we don't even think of it
Yeah.
as anything like of anything
was-
about it.
yeah.
Like it's crazy how that like we're coming from those sort of
There was
environments. SubhanAllah.
actually, it was a viral video. It was an infant, like maybe like 1 year old, wearing like a baby army uniform, like an American military army uniform, singing like an army hymn, like a song that's really popular in the army, and it was actually tweeted out by the U.S. Army's Twitter account. So it was like very clearly propaganda, you know. And just that's the thing. Someone commented saying like, if this was a Chinese child or a Russian child or a Pakistani child or an Iranian child or any other national, you know, any other military tweeting this, it would be labeled as like extremist terrorism or something like that, or like heavy indoctrination, right? It's the same thing like you see, like people would jump on that immediately, but just the fact that it's coming from the U.S. Army, that we're just gonna ignore it. The fact that this is literal indoctrination. You're making like a child sing like this army hymn, and dressed up complete, and like the baby had like camouflage like makeup on its face and everything. It was like wearing like a full like military uniform, just in baby size. So it was very and that stuff it happens all the time.
Yeah, bro. Like even considering that as an American, you're less than 5% of the world's population. Like it's
Yeah.
really not that special. Like you're not like Chinese people can say, "Oh, we're a whole civilization. We're like over 1 billion people, right?" They've got some historical backing, but America's what 4.2% of the world population, and your lifestyle and culture is not that widely accepted across the world. It's just you guys. But I guess because your entertainment industry,
Yeah.
everything's pushed outwards, it looks like
That's
America's the biggest deal. But
And
yeah,
I think with the army as well, specifically, like they prop up the army so much, and I think like even in Australia, like even with the whole we have the Remembrance Day, I think, and what's the other one, Anzac Day, and it's like a given. And subhanallah, like being as a Muslim, right? Like for me, you just sort of you believe in, Allah and His Prophet sallallahu and the books and angels and all that, and you just kind of have that, and that's all you have. But then you go through the schooling system, right? And that's what we were relating to before about parents not being aware of our condition, is that you kind of go into school and like it's Anzac Day's such a big deal, Remembrance Day is a big deal, but then far out, like 20 years later you find out, wait, these guys were fighting the Ottomans, bro. Like bro, like what's going on? I was in my mind, I'm just thinking, oh yeah, they saved the country, bro. They're in Turkey fighting in Gallipoli. How's this? How are they saving the country? Like, this doesn't even make any sense. Like it took 20 years. It took me like 6-7 years. Like just when I'm finishing high school, like when I just started to get into Deen, I had to unthink like so much of what I like just kind of took as given. It's like how can people, and then when you have these sort of conversations with, I guess, normal Australians or whatever, they think you're an extremist. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of like how we've been that deeply indoctrinated just to kind of give it as they fought for our country, for our land, and pride and army, and every time like we're meant to sort of the go here in Australia is that we sort of salute the armies. The people that were part of the armies who are like, I don't know, 100 years old, 90 years old. There's also push for them to get funding from the government even after they've retired from the army. There's all these like crazy things because the sentiment's so real for the armies.
There's similarities to that too, like the amount of indoctrination and the amount of remembrance that goes into the military. Like we have, it's called there's Memorial Day, so that one's for fallen soldiers, military personnel that have died, and then there's Veterans Day, so the ones that are still alive, who have served, and so those two are pretty big in terms of like the amount of propaganda that gets pushed out by it. But I mean, it's very similar logic that like if you were to criticize it, that they're saying that the common phrase that Americans spew is, "Oh, they're over there protecting our freedom," and I'm just thinking like, come on, man, how's drone striking a wedding protecting our freedom in Yemen? Like, does that even make any sense to you? Just think about it, you know. But it's the propaganda has just been filled, and I mean it's political suicide to criticize the American military over here. I mean, we've seen it over here with like certain politicians have just started criticizing the state of Israel, and that's like being controversial. So imagine if an American politician were to criticize the military, it would be political suicide. Like you would be blackballed, cast aside. Absolutely,
That's actually true. So is that why people like what Ilhan Omar and stuff, they haven't gone down that route yet, from what I gather?
Because they know it's like it'd be a career ender. Like you really can't. I mean, to be honest, I never thought that there would be a politician who criticized Israel and would still maintain her seat. And we've had a handful now, alhamdulillah, that's happened. But and the ideology is changing a little bit more in America, slightly. You have a lot of more like the more young-minded people, the Generation Z, a lot of millennials. They're really re-examining this idea of the military. I mean, just nationalism in general and American exceptionalism. You see like a big movement of people trying to like distance themselves from this idea that, hey, just because we're American means we're better and more deserving of human rights than someone in another country. So I mean, it's a slow change, man, because the propaganda is real heavy.
Yeah, bro. I just wanted to go back to quickly. You were mentioning that gathering in your community in Phoenix, Arizona. I wanted to ask what's the sort of Islamic culture there? Because I guess it would be much more of a small town than the gateway cities.
Well, Phoenix, Arizona is actually the 5th largest city in America.
Oh, really?
It doesn't get. I didn't know this until maybe last year, and then I've been bragging about it to everybody that I know. I'm like, hey, you live in Seattle? Guess what? My city's bigger than yours. Like very famous cities are actually.
Oh, it's bigger than Seattle. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Bigger than Seattle, Philadelphia, I believe Dallas, other like pretty big cities. I think the ones above us are New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, and San Francisco. But anyway,
I only know cities according to rappers. Yeah. So Chicago is Chance the Rapper. Pittsburgh is Wiz Khalifa.
Yeah,
that's all I know. New York is like the home of comedy as well. So.
Bro, but yeah, so about Phoenix, so there's a decently large Islamic culture there, like even your MSAs and everything?
There's a fairly large Muslim population. So they came around, there's a big immigrant wave to the United States in the 60s and the 70s. Yeah. My grandfather actually came to America in the 60s, not to Arizona, but he came here, and that's when my father came as well. So he was basically raised in America. But in Phoenix, that happened too. It was a lot of students, mostly from like different movements like Ikhwan al-Muslimin, Jamaat Islam. So they came in, they studied. Their original intention was that we're going to come here and go back. Then they realized, hey, we have our families here. We got a really nice job here. We're going to stay. So then they started building like these communities up, different centers. So the masjid that I'm actually like regularly attending, and it's one I actually used to work for. That one's been here since 1984. And it's actually right on the Arizona State University campus. Oh, wow. And Arizona State University is the biggest public university in the country.
I've actually heard of Arizona State, as in that's a big place people go to.
It's notorious for being easy to get into, but actually, alhamdulillah, it's actually a really good university. Really great programs where I attended. And yeah, so we have this masjid, a very visible masjid. It's modeled after Masjid al-Aqsa. Basically right in the middle of campus, so people see it. We play the adhan 5 times a day on speakers, and people hear it. No one complains.
Wow, that's amazing.
It gets a lot of people walking in, and we've had a lot of converts that way, actually, alhamdulillah. So
alhamdulillah, that's really good.
It's actually so it's a very so that masjid specifically it's very centered just because by nature of it being in the middle of the university, and we have a lot of international students from Arab countries and from India and Pakistan, and from Indonesia and Malaysia. We have a lot of them, um, attending the university. So they come to the masjid, and it's a very active place. It's been like that's been like the community center, the Arizona, like the community center masjid, basically for the past 30, or sorry, should we say 40 years now.
No, that's great because it's right next to the campus. So I guess it's like
Yeah.
a lot of back in like a lot of exchange of ideas and things like that. A lot of different
sure.
people coming through.
And it's a very diverse one. It's actually their board actually is the only board I've seen where every single person was actually born in America. Like every person on that board was born and raised here. So it's quite interesting.
Do you guys have the big sort of days and stuff coming through Phoenix much?
Yeah, because you guys, that's a big thing about, I guess, America, where the dyes are so big that we know about them really well as well. Like,
Yeah.
Qadis and stuff.
yeah, the Yasekadi, who else
Yeah.
is, there's so many, like...
Do people come to Phoenix? Or
Yeah,
do you
very, very often. When I was with the MSA, we did our best to bring in a few people. The masjids bring in a few people, like other organizations. Like, I don't know if you've heard of this. They're called CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. Yeah. So like they have, there's a chapter here. They have a banquet every year, and they bring like a scholar, like a big name scholar, a da'i to be a keynote speaker. So they come in pretty often. There's not like a big name living here, but because Phoenix is such a large city and a lot of people also like to fundraise here. You'll have like a lot of them coming through, or other organizations just bringing them for an event like the MSA for a halaqa. Like we just had one this past weekend from a sheikh from Dallas, like for a workshop or something like the masjid might put it on, for example. So because it is a big city.
You mentioned like those your parents' generation, for example, or generation before them, they all came to America and realized, dunya life is good there, so they kind of settled, I guess, essentially.
Yeah.
The dunya of a deen, but so then essentially they built institutions and all that. Would you say that, like, for example, we're talking about how nationalism was such a big thing, like in the American context. Would you say that, like, for us, right, what's happened is that, like, I have like family members, even in Bangladesh, for example, because me and Josh are from background is Bangladeshi.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of have this sort of inferiority complex where it's like, okay, we're in the West here. The West have given us so much good stuff. Just be a good Muslim, pray your 5 prayers and do that, but that's all it should be. Don't need to, give dawah out on the streets because, you don't, the white man sort of given us this privilege as it is, or, just don't make your, don't even grow a beard because, you don't want to portray yourself in that manner. Just fit in with society.
Yeah, don't inconvenience them, basically.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I've actually had that sort of upbringing as well, and it's kind of mixed in with like sort of ideas of secularism and nationalism, where even you get like perhaps family members that are always so proud to talk about how great America is or how great Australia is, talking it up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that that perhaps will inhibit just your way of looking at deen in general in a holistic sense? Have you had that sort of experience? What do you think?
I've seen it with other people. Alhamdulillah, my parents were practicing. So I grew up, being able to practice, going to Islamic school and like getting to meet a lot of great people, getting to learn from scholars directly and, continuing that relationship. So I can't say personally that was my experience. Maybe a little bit where it's kind of like, don't inconvenience these people. Like but it was more so from the perspective, like, these are your neighbors. I don't know if it was coming so much from an inferiority complex, because from my father's perspective, he was raised here. Like, this is like his home. Or my other aunts and uncles who have been raised here, kind of. My mom's been here for a very long time as well. So she kind of feels like very ingrained in the American society. So she doesn't feel like she has anything to prove or defend about herself. She like the mentality from my family was that, like, we're here. Yeah. We're different. Yeah. But nothing that we do is going to inconvenience them, Alhamdulillah, I think that was a very positive upbringing for myself, and I can't thank my parents enough for it. Um, but I have seen it with other people. I don't know if it's so much that logic that you were saying, like of I think that might be more of an excuse than it is the reason behind it. I think the main reason behind it is just like a very strong devotion, or like maybe a subconscious devotion to secularism, or maybe just inherent laziness when it comes to religion in general. I mean, because we forget that that our communities back in the countries where our parents came from, there were secular people there too, right? There were people who didn't practice back then too. I mean, going back to the beginning of Islam, like around they're generally like, you're gonna find people who aren't that practicing, and they moved here too. So, um,
Yeah,
but I mean, I have heard that excuse a couple times. I haven't looked too deeply into it, so maybe I'm not giving you the best answer right now. But it's not something I've really come across as like the reason as to why we're not gonna really go out there. In fact, a lot of times from generally a lot of like community leaders, they give that reason that because we're here, we might as well invite them to something that's beautiful. We might as well show them good character, be good to them, be nice to them, be kind to them, no matter if they're Muslim or non-Muslim, because there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of people, and people are inherently good anyway. So that was a lot of the messages that I was hearing back then. I don't know so much as to say like, hey, just leave them alone. But like, I was brought up in a meshed environment too, so it's probably a little different.
bro. Alhamdulillah, like it sounds like you had a
Alhamdulillah.
good upbringing.
Yeah, he had
in
an easy
Phoenix.
way out. That's what
Yeah,
it seems
bro.
like.
Because when you first said Phoenix, I was like, oh, what? Like the middle of nowhere? Like, because we don't know our American states that well.
Yeah.
So alhamdulillah, it sounds like it's a really good hub.
I mean, even
Arizona
Americans,
is.
when I tell them that Phoenix is a very large city, they call me a liar, because they're like, I've never like, it's not like a cultural hub per se. Like, you have, like you said, like rappers are from these cities and they really talk about their cities a lot, or there's like very big sites in these cities. I mean, Arizona is most famous for the Grand Canyon, and that's 4 hours north of Phoenix. So it's not even, I can't even take credit for it because it's not in my city.
Exactly. Yeah, but I was gonna say, so like alhamdulillah, like you have family members who were like raised in the West, I guess, and that's a generation before you, right? Whereas for us, our parents came here. We're the second generation, I guess.
For
so,
sure.
like our parents definitely still have that hesitation towards like, how do we go about things here? How do we do things here? So I think a lot of that stems from that. Like, they don't know.
I would say over here as well, that's the majority case for my generation. People are actually very surprised to find out that my father was raised here. So I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm special or anything like that, but it's a different case. I can't really I can't apply my case to the general amount of Americans here. Like, most of my best friends, their parents, like, who come from an immigrant background, their parents like are kind of in the same situation as what you're describing.
Yep. Because I know there's Muslim American families who've been there for like, as in even their grandparents came here. Like, it's like So I have a friend who lives in the Bay Area. Like, his grandparents come here, live here. All his colors and mamas like live here. Like, his whole family is pretty much here. There's not much left in India at all.
Yeah. That's the case with me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's similar to you, I guess.
I've actually never been to India because all of my extended family has been here. So our vacations were to Florida to visit my maternal grandparents and to visit family members, because everyone's here. So there was never really a reason to go back.
Yeah. Well, whereas with us, it's definitely like you're always trying to go back whenever you can. But yeah, also with regards to Phoenix, what's the sort of culture like there? Is it like sort of a Desi sort of Tablighi culture, or like what are the sort of Muslims like there? Is it sort of
Tablighi culture?
Nah, so for example, like I'll give you an example of
sure.
Sydney, right? So Sydney, like it's sort of like you only know if you're from there. So Sydney, I don't know, because the Lebanese community is really big here, and they were the first ones to come here, so they're maybe third generation now, second, third. I don't know if it was through them, but there's a very strong sort of Salafistic culture here. Yeah, it's sort of stifling in a way, as in we don't have any of those like liberal Muslims take off the hijab, again, lesbian, people seeking
which we seem to think comes from America a lot.
Accepted in the mainstream. So we don't have any of that. For us, it's rather the opposite. So you want to be a traditional Muslim, right? But you're sort of stifled by the most conservative option available.
For sure.
And that's from a Salafistic trend, which I guess has been exported, I guess, from a lot of the scholars who maybe came from Arab countries, had the sort of training there, or from Medina. I don't know, somewhere. But that's sort of what is a challenge we face in a way. So it's sort of the opposite.
Yeah, that and just the fitna of like clubbing and
of course there's a general Western struggles, but when you're trying to become Muslims, a lot of people are deterred
they're deterred.
A lot of people are deterred by the fact that the community here seems very stringent, and for no apparent reason, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like you have to suddenly like change your way of like wearing dress, and everything has. I think it is a lot to do with like the more Arab dominated society that we experience. Because even with, I guess I don't know why we don't really have a sort of Desi sort of figure, except for maybe Uthman Badr, but he's not like, we don't necessarily have a figure here where they're like a relatable Desi character that's chill, but then talks about Islam for some reason. It's always very like Arab dominated people, which isn't a problem. But I guess the way they kind of go about it, like I think it's more it flows, or it's more receptive for their own culture. I think Arabs tend to like that sort of, Hoblos type and everything, which is an issue. A lot of obviously Bengalis and stuff like Hoblos style, but in terms of relatability, in the sense of the struggles that you go through specifically.
Relatability, definitely.
Yeah, for example, like if you're trying to become religious here, you go to like your average religious friend, and they're going to tell you music's outright haram. You can't listen to it at all, and that's a bit disillusioning, right? Like, someone to come quit cold turkey like that, or even like, I guess, gender interaction here, there's always a sort of haziness, like you're not allowed to talk at all except for business purposes, but that's really hard to do. Like, as in, you never get a very like organic idea of how to actually conduct that here, because always the most strict opinion is taken. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
very different.
Yeah, I understand that. With Phoenix,
in Phoenix, is it quite different?
Yeah, I would say with Phoenix it's quite different. I mean, there are some American cities where I've heard it's quite like that. Philadelphia sounds a lot like Sydney right now, the way that you're describing it, just different ethnic base.
Exactly.
But in Phoenix specifically, it's actually quite diverse, ethnically diverse, which then a lot of times will contribute to ideological diversity, right? So there is like a fairly large Desi community that comes from like a more Deobandi background, where they are more like strict minded, but they still have like a hold on to like some type of traditionalism, right? I mean, there's like a small Tablighi community. They've knocked on our doors a couple times. I'm like, bro, like I see you at the masjid. What are you doing here?
You're wasting your time. Yeah.
Most of the time, the Tablighis they're coming from out of state, and they stay at the masjid, and then they try to convince.
That's true. Can we do a Tablighi rant?
They meet me at
like,
they meet me at the masjid to convince me to come to the masjid. I'm like, bro, like,
like a funny story. Just to add quickly,
for sure.
I haven't said this on air because like a few months back, I'm like, I was at I don't go Western Sydney Uni, but it's close to my house, so sometimes I go chill there and do work and whatnot when I'm free. So then once I'm like chilling, wearing my kafir clothing or just t-shirt and whatever, hoodie, and I see this like full thobe guy, like Desi, you can tell, big beard. He's just like strolling along, doesn't like, very confident Muslim guy. I'm like, I've never seen him. I'm gonna say salam. Let's go up to him. It's like around Asr time anyway. And I was actually gonna head off to Musalla and pray, but I just happened to see him there. So I go up to him, hey, Assalamualaikum, Walaikum salam. I'm like, all right, cool, like, how's it going? And then we chat, and he's just like, brother, can I give you a reminder? And then he's just like, pumps with 5 minutes. I'm just listening. I'm like, alhamdulillah, like this guy's very enthusiastic about the deen. Like, not gonna take that away
For
from
sure.
him. But it's just like, you didn't need to do that, bro. Like, I'm literally just told you I'm gonna pray Asr with you. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then after that, I go pray Asr with him. Yeah. And afterwards, he gives me like a 20-minute reminder.
Oh,
right
man,
after
yeah.
that, like I'm like, bro, like I understand, you know, it's good you're giving dawah, but it's like, bro, you gotta read the situation, bro. You can clearly tell, like,
Yeah.
I'm practicing. Like, you gotta sort of like, you gotta be like you gotta talk to me like a person in the sense that you don't have to berate someone with a lecture.
Yeah.
So, I've had these. I don't know, man. They need some sales training.
Was the talk
sort of
about
pick up on
Iman and
things.
Yaqeen by any chance?
Yeah, literally. And it would be like, you know, you
That-
should be
yep.
seeking knowledge, brother, and you should, you know your fard line and everything. I'm like, okay, I know this. Thanks, bro. Like,
I mean, I'll give it to them. They care about us. They care about their brothers and sisters. So that's
true.
good.
That's true.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
one
they
of
just
the-
need a
one of
different
the-
approach.
One of the strangest places I've gotten, not strange, I guess, but like every time I've caught an Uber, it just happened to be a Muslim guy 100% of the time. And I've only caught it like 5 times,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, they see your name.
And they always give me an Islamic reminder
Oh, wow.
as soon as I say Assalamu alaikum, how's it going, brother? Like, it's really like an iman boost, like right before like wherever I'm going.
Yeah, that's good.
Before
Hey, man,
clubbing.
that's good.
Yeah. Like, take
Before you
a
hit the club.
catch a Uber to the city because you're going to be too drunk to drive
Yeah.
back.
Alhamdulillah.
He gives you the talk.
My friend once, because here it's a thing where a lot of the Arab guys here that are Muslim, they're in security, they work in security and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I had a story where there's a friend that wasn't as practicing, back in those times. He was like walking to the club. There's like a Muslim security guard and stuff. He sees this because you gotta give your ID and stuff, and he gives it to the security guy. The guy looks at him back. He's like, "Assalamualaikum, brother." It's the biggest like fu before you go into the club, bro. It's just the funniest thing.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
I've heard- yeah.
It's good that we maintain that though.
Alhamdulillah. But yeah, like back to Phoenix, it's like you have there's like a Salafi community, kind of. They're not like organized per se, and they're not like, you know, vicious or like very like overzealous or anything like that. They just kind of like, they do their own thing. They hang out among themselves, and really they're not really like, you know, in your face type of Salafis. They're kind of like low key. Then you have
Yasik Adi type, maybe chill Salafi sort of.
yeah, like more so like, and they're not gonna like takfir you or anything like that. Like, I've never been like takfired by a local here. Every single time I've been takfired, it's been either on Twitter or by someone from out of state. Actually on the masjid phone once, but that's another story. But then you'll have different Sufi groups too. They generally stick among themselves. But I mean, like everyone attending the masjid is kind of like from a different type of background. Like, you have there is a pretty heavy like ikhwani like mentality too that's coming. There's a lot of different people who come from like that background. A lot of the people who are like building the institutions in Phoenix. So but I mean, that's more like politically leaning and things like that. But generally, like, you have like a very good diversity of thought, which is I mean, I like to attribute that to my upbringing, alhamdulillah, with all these people that I've grown up around. Because I mean, ethnic diversity too, I think there's like a lot of, I haven't seen as many like intermarriages in terms of like cultural intermarriages as I've seen in this community. I've lived in other communities too, and I've visited a lot of other communities in America, and this has to be one of the most ethnically diverse communities I've ever been to. Alhamdulillah, and I think that contributes to a lot. I know a lot of people like to brush aside diversity and think that it's just kind of like what do you call it? Just like a check mark that you have to hit off at every event. But I think it is, like, because our experiences are very different. My experience as an Indian American is also going to be very different from a Pakistani American, just because like we're coming from, even though I guess we're like the same ethnicity technically, but like we have different experiences that can contribute to a lot of good things, you know. So I mean, obviously don't overdo it in terms of the diversity with like needing to fill a quota or just doing it for the sake of filling out a quota. But sorry, that was my random spiel, and I don't even know how I got there. But yeah, it's fairly like, the ideologically wise, it's pretty. I would say it's pretty diverse. Like, you have a lot of like more like a lot of the scholars tend to be more Sufi oriented just because they come from a traditional background where they studied with scholars whose traditional link goes back like uh
For us, it's the opposite. It's really hard to find like a
Mm.
Sufi scholar, as in most of them are just going to be like blasting you down, like the pump up talks, like the sort of like more strict side of it. Like
Yeah.
it's good in a way; it pumps
For
up your
sure.
iman, but it's not suited to every
It
every
can
audience. I
be
guess.
tough because like if you're not coming if you a lot the thing about like with different people's I guess how palatable like a message can be to someone, it can be very difficult
Exactly.
for a lot of people to really absorb that type of message. For you, I mean, if you're like raised on it, like it could be like you can get accustomed to it or something. But even with certain people's personalities, it just never works. Like certain friends of mine's, like
Yeah.
they can't be like if I need to correct them if they're doing something wrong, like they cannot be yelled at, or else they're just gonna dismiss everything, or they might break down, or whatever it might be. Or they can't just be like they can't be put down based off what they're doing. Other people, they can take that any day of the week and they're gonna improve based off of it. So yeah, it is really
100%.
tough, and that's why like I also like this. I mean, I've met a lot of very nice Salafis too. So, I mean, you can be Salafi and also give like very uplifting reminders. But
Yeah, definitely. Like we've got leaders here that are like Salafis and they're chill as well. They understand the nuances and like I don't have an issue. It's more about the minded type that are very unreceptive
For
to
sure.
any sort of opinion. They're sort of the gatekeepers essentially. And I guess you'll find that in all groups anyway. You find that in Sufis as
For
well.
sure.
You find that in Deobandis as well. So that kind of mentality exists. But even touching in, I guess, how we approach the way of approaching Deen, like I found even like as we did an episode with about the four temperaments with Muhammad Ishaq, just the
Yeah.
idea of he went into the types of temperaments. And I have a younger sister, she's young, she's just going to high school now. I found that like trying to kind of ground her in Deen and figuring her personality out, it's like you have to kind of do both at the
for
same
sure.
time. So for me it was like I realized like rather than it's really weird how she reacts. Like if you focus, like for example, you have to pray now. Like if you say that, they don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like it's some people might if you're maybe a certain personality type, but for my sister, I realized like that method is just not gonna work. It just doesn't make sense. She'll don't want to pray. She'll be even more lazier and all that. And that was kind of how I was as well when I was told to go pray or whatever. But then I realized like the tactic is to indirectly remind her. So what I do now is like I just tell her, look, hey, can you move the chair here because she might be watching TV or whatever. I'll just be like, look, I just got to pray. And she'll be like, oh, okay, I'll come.
Yeah,
You know what
for
I mean? So that doesn't put her in the spotlight to sort of agree or disagree. It's kind of like a side comment where it triggers her to her wanting to do it. You know what I mean? So that sort of approach, and then just the idea of when you're discussing perhaps stories in the Quran or even stories of within the Sirah, it's about making it relatable to her and what she's going through as a kid. And I think once you find that, they'll latch onto it and they'll remember it, and it will come out in times where it's sort of the situation demands it, and they'll remember the story that's said and the context is similar. They'll kind of relate to it and there'll be like a personal connection to it. So I think that's just I guess a microcosm example of the approach I had to take, because I can be frank, alhamdulillah, my parents are like religious to an extent and stuff, like, but in the sense of you have to, they're still they don't kind of push or become more practicing like they do, but in the sense of studying, in the sense of understanding Deen more, they kind of toe the line a bit, like, okay, this is where you stop. You don't want to get too extreme.
I think to circle back on how we were talking about, sorry about that. To circle back on how we were talking about liberal Muslims a lot, I think this type of method has really contributed to. I mean, I don't want to bash, Salafis way too hard or something like that, but this type of like method that a lot of people grew up with really pushed a lot of people away. So now when they're getting into college or getting into whatever it might be, or like getting really sucked into these like really harmful ideologies, it's because they're getting something there that they didn't get with their religion. So then they come back and try to change their religion to conform to that, and they're coming back and trying to make it too extreme the other way, right? But I think this really, really harsh, especially with the way that a lot of people are nowadays, that we have to be mindful that people are either sensitive, to whatever it might be. They might not, be receptive to you yelling at them, just because they're not getting yelled at anywhere else. They're not getting yelled at school. They're not getting yelled at work, right? This doesn't happen anywhere else, right? But then as soon as they're in Quran class, they're, getting beat by the teacher, or like emotionally abused by the teacher, or whatever it might be. Um, this, I think, it really pushes a lot of people away. So, just, we need to be mindful about it as well. And I think that also contributes to how we were talking about with, the parents always blaming the youth. I mean, how are you bringing up your child? He or she does not want to partake in the religion as much as you did, just because how did you present the religion? How did you practice the religion even, sorry, just a little bit of a tangent, but
Yeah, like practice what you preach. Essentially, a lot of them, like they grew up in an environment of Islam where they'll pray. They'll see their parents pray 5 times, but they'll like
sure.
super harsh with
exactly.
everyone around them. So it's like this is what Islam is essentially, and that's kind of what's made up in their mind. And unfortunately, like that's what we have to navigate as youth. And I guess even with the initiatives that we start, we're kind of breaking that sort
Absolutely.
of barriers down in terms of presenting Islam. And we know that's obviously not authentic Islam anyway. So it's about kind of bringing the, like, I guess for me, I was like kind of hardcore Salafi in my earlier years, and then you kind of get in touch with the stuff Sheikh Hamza puts out and everything, and to Tasawwuf, you kind of get a different dimension of Islam where you sort of felt that, where was this sort of my whole life
for
in
sure.
the community as a norm? It
I can
was sort
relate
of
to that.
missing, right? But yeah, alhamdulillah. So that's the point. Like with, I guess you guys are doing like articles as well, and us talking about it in a sort of normal, in a more normal way, in accordance to the context that we are
Definitely.
living in. That's what we're doing, and it kind of stems back to what we were talking about earlier about using different mediums to bring out Islam, to make it like just. I was having a chat with my I think this was with a guest as well. Just the idea of is making Islam part of the culture. Obviously, you're not going to change the religion. There's principles, there's foundations to it as well. But in the sense of, culturally, like I know it's a thing now, like
Absolutely.
skateboarders. I think they do Arabic calligraphy on the skateboards and like
Definitely.
cool stuff like that. Like if you kind of engage with that, but sometimes perhaps I wouldn't say maybe it's maybe not a Salafi thing per se. Maybe it's a more mindset thing that we've kind of attributed it to be Salafism. That it's just Islam or non-Islam. Culture is you have to wear thobe. Like I even contest it. I talk to like some. I know even with I know like I'm not dissing thobes, like I wear them and stuff. But it's like when you become religious, it's this perspective that you suddenly have to wear thobes, and that defines
this is
your
the national
religiosity.
uniform of religious Muslims.
Yeah,
The international
of Islam.
uniform. Sorry.
and subhanallah, and it like if you actually think about it, and if you actually look the fiqh and everything like that, you'll start to understand that there's sort of rules you have to follow, like you have to cover the aura and everything, right? But at the same time, you've got to you can express it in a different way. And if you just look at cultures throughout history, man, that are Muslims in Muslim lands, you'll see there's diversity there, and Islam breeds diversity. So, and that's what we're missing in this kind of current context, right? Where we seem to think that it has to be stringent, right? And unfortunately, that's what we have to navigate.
I think, that's definitely something that's quite often, it was ignored a lot of the times in our upbringing in the early days, especially this idea of cultural expression, where Muslims weren't really, Muslim Americans or Muslim Australians or Muslim Brits, Muslim Canadians weren't really, encouraged to become cultural producers, right? Not even just career wise, right? Like career wise, you can only be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, like whatever, that's a given. But even on the side, engaging in a lot of like either cultural practices that are halal, that don't contradict the Sharia, that don't contradict any of our principles as Muslims. And now we see it where we're not cultural producers, but we still want to participate in it. So how do we kind of go about it? And we're kind of behind now because we've been here for like 40-50 years almost, and we're a little bit behind on that loop. But I think recently, especially, you see a bigger push for Muslims to be, cultural producers, to be partaking in the culture of their country, to partake in, or their society, whatever it might be. Just because, like, with globalization, like, a lot of stuff is international now. But like, even like TikTok, for example, like you said, you have a lot of like famous TikTokers who are Muslim, and not all their TikToks have to do with Islam, but they are very recognizable as Muslims, um, or even, yeah,
Yeah, like even Sister Zara, I think she's on TikTok. Are you familiar with her? She even had a billboard of her promoting TikTok
yeah. I
on
think it was in
like
New York
in
City
New
or
York
something like
somewhere. I
that.
saw the photo. So
Yeah,
like that's like a huge thing as a
definitely.
hijabi. That's just culturally hijabi. By the way, she blocked me on Twitter. That's a different story, but because what happened? I think she's Shia. So not that I
Yeah.
bash Shias on Twitter or something, but I think I said something about the Sahaba and defending Sahaba or something
Oh
against her. I
man.
think she saw it and she blocked me
Yeah.
because it was a funny story. Because I have a curious cat, and I think I made a few tweets or videos about why she blocked me. How does she even know
Yeah.
who I am? Like, what is this? Does she listen to Boys in the Cave or something? And then someone messaged me and it was like, oh, she blocked you because she does that to people that I guess are quote unquote
Oh, okay.
divisive. So I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is. But I'm still like, I'm rooting for her in the sense that
Yeah.
she's actually breaking down the sort of stereotypes of Muslims. And if you just go through a TikTok and just a normal girl that's embodying, I don't know
For
to
sure.
what degree, maybe she's wanting Islam essentially, and
Yeah.
she's proud of it, and she's this normal girl
Yeah.
documenting her life, and
I mean,
that it's simple thing,
yeah,
know.
I mean, I think we're gonna have growing pains regardless. I'm just sorry, I'm still laughing that she blocked you. Sorry. But like, in this now, you're seeing Muslims like take on this like very visible, and like, Muslims who are like actively saying, that we are Muslim, and like being very Muslim in their, in whatever avenue that they're doing, in like media or culture or whatever it might be. And I think they're going to be growing pains. They're going to be things that we find utterly ridiculous, or things that might be inherently problematic. I know you guys talked to Tariq about the show Rami. So I mean, yeah, that was like a really hot topic, for example. And we saw a lot of things that were wrong with it, but there were some positives that we could take from it as well. Um, so I think having those growing pains, it's important. But then also, being able to push the right people into these things, like, for the longest time, like, it's a bit different, but parents would tend to push their really smart kids into medicine, and if the kid is dumb, then they can go be an alim, right? Like, why would you do that? Like, scholarship is intense. Islamic scholarship, studying the tradition, is like something that we need brilliant minds for. And alhamdulillah, we have a lot of brilliant minds, but this push of a lot of like unintelligent people into it has really created a lot of problems, I think. But I think we should be doing the same when it comes to culture. If your son has like a penchant for videography, let him become a videographer if that's his passion and if he can get paid for it. And the job market is expanding as society goes on. So I think just needing to be aware of the potential in a lot of these career paths and pushing in the right people into them. So making sure that we're getting cultural producers, but the right people that are getting it right. You raise your child the right way, and if he or she has an interest in that, in a specific realm, then they can use that to inform their practice of that art form.
Yeah, 100%, bro. So just to circle back to your traversing tradition right now. So I guess that's what you guys are doing on a like higher plane, I guess, sort of cultural output in a global sort of world, addressing Muslim issues in a way. What are your sort of long-term plans now with this? Is it like, has it gained the sort of traction you'd hoped? And now what direction do you want to take now? Do you want to expand into different sort of categories to talk about, genres to talk about? Or is it, or like sort of what do you plan to do with it, I guess? And also just to give us an overview of the main people involved with it, seeing as I'm not on Twitter.
For sure.
Like, just to understand the people who are really active and part
Definitely.
of it.
So, in terms of long term, I really like the trajectory we've had, and obviously there's some steps that I would like us to take. You mentioned it earlier how a lot of people don't read, and how a lot of people, it might just fly over their heads or whatever it might be. So
people don't read long form,
yeah,
I guess,
yeah,
articles. But you put something on the Instagram story, they'll like
yeah.
pause and read each page of the story. I do that.
So things
Yeah.
like that. Maybe going into more either like audio voice note type things, like explaining like a concept that we've written in an article, talking about, and like just basically utilizing different platforms and optimizing it. So what's best for Instagram, we need to be doing that basically.
Yep.
So we now we have structure, I guess you could say. So we're officially like a nonprofit organization. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we have like a board set up. We have like a staff, quote unquote. They're not paid, so they're not technically staff. But I mean, it's all a volunteer basis, and alhamdulillah, everyone involved. I've done the least amount of work because I'm a board member, so I don't have a lot to do. But alhamdulillah, like our staff, especially, like they're amazing people, mashallah. So we have our executive director Wasim, um, Hira, who's our director of marketing, Sammy, he's on Twitter as well. He's our editor in chief. These three have been working very hard to basically like streamline. So like we've had a very nice flow of consistency. I'm very proud of them, and a lot of good interns and writers. And you mentioned Ibrahim earlier. I love that guy, mashallah. Um, he's very very good energy. Um, so like it's a lot of like people who have either graduated college or are still in university, um, going into their career paths, either studying as students of knowledge. We have a lot, like a solid handful of people who are, serious students of knowledge who are studying under legitimate shuyukh. And a lot of us have like a very strong network of scholars that we oftentimes refer back to, especially when it comes to articles. I mean, even though we're not giving like fatwa in these articles, things like that, right? None of us are really qualified to be doing that, and that's not really what we're trying to do anyways. But making sure that hey, this is in line of like if we're referencing something or this idea that we're trying to illustrate, making sure that it's within line. So having that network, I think, is really important, and having a lot of great people who have those networks and those connections, and having people who are actively studying as well. I'd say everyone on the team has like an above average level of Islamic literacy, which I think is important, especially when you're trying to disseminate the information, because we're also, within the society as well. We're also speaking the language of the people who we're trying to communicate with. So I mean, inshallah, we're trying to take it to the next level, by being consistent with our writing, which we have been, alhamdulillah, and then looking into other avenues potentially to get our content out there, because I think we have a lot to offer. It's just a matter of bringing it to the audiences.
Yeah, 100%. Have you written anything yourself? Because I was looking through all the authors, and I was like, so which one's Zain?
So
like, I want to read something you read.
I've written one article. It was back in 2018. Actually, it was about the importance of staying true to the importance of basically like referencing these scholars and leaning on scholarship to inform our way of living when it comes to Muslims, even in the West, right? I wrote it at a time where it was like pretty what do you call it, the movement to really distance yourself from scholars and shuyukh, and do it your own type of, whether it was coming from either like really really devout Salafis or Wahhabis, where they're kind of dismissing a lot of scholars and dismissing like 1400 years of tradition, or whether it was the liberal Muslims who were really saying like, hey, we don't need these old men with beards to tell us what we're doing is right or wrong. So it was just a matter of like really pointing out like, hey, throughout history, like we need to really look at how our ummah collectively has revered the scholars and how they've really look to them for guidance, right? So it was only one article. I'm not much, I mean, alhamdulillah, like I wrote a lot in college for like just like in terms of essays and things like that, but I've always been involved more on the logistical side of things. Right now, being president, I don't really have to vote, or sorry, I don't really have to write. I just have to keep the ship afloat, Alhamdulillah. So
And you worked with other organizations, right? From what I was
yeah,
told.
other Muslim organizations, not so much as big scale internationally as traversing tradition, but locally, especially, I've been involved with a lot of different Muslim organizations, whether it be like relief organizations or civil rights organizations. Um, Masajid, like I said, like I worked for a masjid, so I've really been around the nonprofit world for most of my life. Actually, like I've just been brought up in that environment and working and volunteering for these different organizations. So, yeah, it's
Did you have a good time? Like, was it a mess? Because we picture Muslim organizations to be complete chaos. So,
um,
what was this sort of
it it
experience?
it really depends on the organization. So when we're talking about masajid specifically, in I don't know how it is in Australia. Maybe you guys can enlighten me, but a lot of times it's a lot of good-minded people, a lot of good-hearted people, but they're uh very wildly unqualified to be on a board of a masjid or to be like managing people. Oftentimes we think, or at least community members will think that because someone is a doctor, they are qualified to, you know,
Yeah,
manage
subhanallah.
manage for full-time employees at the masjid. Or if someone, even if it is someone who's like around the masjid a lot and volunteering a lot, just because you're a very good volunteer doesn't necessarily mean that you have long-term vision and you know
100%,
how to make
100%.
connections and you know how to manage people. So I
Or
think,
understand people even.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of masajid are plagued with that. Um, that was a little bit of my experience as well when I used to work for one. And I've heard it from all over. Like I've traveled this country, coast to coast, in different communities, and it's a fairly consistent issue that comes up with masajid, just because, um, I mean, these are the people who are dedicated, but it's just a matter of, finding the right talent and pushing the right people into these roles, and
Yeah, I think
getting
even
young people involved, because it's usually the only people who are like paying members of masajid are like the older people, so they're not, and then the young people can't complain if they're not doing anything about it, so um it's really important to get a lot of people into it. But with other Muslim organizations, they tend to be fairly more organized. It really depends. Like you have really big ones like Islamic Relief. They're a relief organization that help out like internationally. I've done a lot of work with Helping Hand for Relief and Development. They're pretty well organized. CARE is also pretty well organized. The Council on American Islamic Relations. Um, Honestly, it depends. Like chapter to chapter, you might hear different stories about different cities. um it really depends on who's running the show, and it really depends on the people that they have involved. Boards are really important to managing the success and finding the right employees too, because a lot of times unqualified people get hired.
yeah, like even I feel that like with your point of just knowing your place, I feel that like from I can only speak from my experience in the sense that a lot of organizations, namely Muslim organizations, you'll have people that definitely would be they are great workers perhaps, but at the same time, as you mentioned, they'll suddenly think that they'll be good in leadership positions, but it's completely different
For
scenarios.
sure.
In the sense that like for example, because there's being the CEO versus there's being a manager versus being a worker. The worker, you just have XYZ tasks to do and you just get it done. Manager is more like making sure that everyone around you is doing it their tasks well, and that requires some sort of emotional intelligence in the sense that you got to know the person and kind of show
Absolutely.
how to do a task in a way where they'll be receptive to it, and that kind of gets the most out of them. And it's about building the morale. There's all these like different aspects of just dealing with people that you just don't encounter as just being a worker. And then there's a CEO, which is not necessarily focusing on the logistics side in the sense that you're watching X worker do X role. It's more so growing and looking at the vision
sure.
and seeing are they heading towards it and getting the right personnel, all that sort of stuff. So it's like complete different, like, because that's kind of my experience, hitting the books and reading about business and leadership versus actually seeing in real life. Where I was with I'm not going to name his name, but my friend who he works hard for within the MSAs here locally. He was telling me that because he's high up there in the leadership, and he organized this talk where there were like a lot of speakers. I think there were like varying perspectives, like psychologists and I don't know, aid workers or whatever.
For sure.
And the event was more geared towards making it seem like the Muslim leadership community, Muslim leaders of the community in different fields are all united. But he was telling me how right before the event was going to start, they were literally all having fights with each other. So it was all like ego, arrogance, everything.
God.
And he was like, oh my goodness, is this going to even work out? And suddenly, like, alhamdulillah, when everything worked out, it just seemed like they put a show on for the audience, in the sense that it just looked like they were united when they were on stage.
For sure.
But it wasn't really the case. Rather, like, perhaps in the background, it's more, arrogance and power and people want to get into positions of power and try to use it for their own gain. And I've seen it for myself within the local masjids, for example, here as well. I'm not obviously all of them, but I know like one or two cases where that's been the case, and which is sort of unfortunate because it hampers sort of how Islam is sort of portrayed, and kind of creates inefficiencies as well, which you'd want to sort of weed out and really become more efficient on that level in a business minded sense, which I don't know, I just feel that we're sort of lacking. But what's your sort of take on that from your kind of experience?
I have two quick comments on that. Number one, the Muslims in the West specifically were very obsessed with creating leadership. But if everyone is a leader, then who is gonna follow, right? We're not instilling the sense of followership. We're not instilling the sense that, hey, maybe I am not qualified to do this, so let me find someone who is, and I'm gonna follow him or her to do whatever it is the task.
Self-awareness,
exactly,
basically, as well.
So there is like this very like it's a false sense of concept, a false sense of confidence is being given to a lot of people, which I think it's becoming detrimental, just because like everyone thinks that they're qualified to do this, when in reality there's maybe two people who are qualified to do this. And these people really know how to sell themselves too, so that starts to create a problem as well. But my second thing was that oftentimes we're a little bit passive because mashallah, Muslims are so humble, so sometimes we really don't think that we are qualified, especially the people that are qualified. They really don't think that they're qualified to do it. So they let someone else take the reins, and that person ends up just being an egomaniac, someone who just wanted power, someone who just wanted clout, whatever it was. This happens quite often. So, I mean, I remember hearing this from a sheikh in Philadelphia. He said that if you are qualified for the position, it is wajib upon you to take up that position, no matter how humble you are, no matter what you think you are. If you know you have the right experience for it, if you know you have the right skill set for it, you better take that position up because you're the best person for the job. And I think that is a mentality we have to push for a lot of people, but we also have to teach people that it takes time to build up to that level of confidence where you are that great at this specific job. Mashallah, like God bless a lot of people, but passing out food in Ramadan does not equate to managing the finances of a multi-million-dollar masjid.
Exactly, subhanAllah.
And this happens everywhere. So, inshallah, I mean, I think with a lot of our experiences that we're going through now, it is growing pains because we are still a new community, quote unquote, in these Western countries, right? And very few cities in America can say that they've had Muslims here for like more than 3 generations, right? I think only like 1 or 2 cities potentially, but I think these growing pains are important for us because when we start taking reins of these leadership positions within our local communities and being able to contribute on a deeper level, I think we're going to take a lot of these experiences that we've had. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad, so try to sift through it. And inshallah, I think we can really improve with that mentality when it comes to leadership, when it comes to management, and just overall execution of our like operations as Muslim Americans or Muslim Australians.
Exactly, like you brought some fantastic points. Even you mentioned the idea of being wajib upon you if you have the credentials and the ability to take up the position. It also works the other way. If you know you're not suited to the
Absolutely.
position and you know there's someone better
Then you
there,
better
and
keep
you
your
know
mouth shut,
yourself.
bro. Like for real.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but then subhanallah, like it's kind of like linking to tasawwuf in the sense that people who want to gain power, it's ego and fame and whatever it comes with that being in that role. People will always lean towards taking those positions of power. Like, unfortunately, even with the community, I was reading some stuff about the idea of you have not psychopaths, but people who take advantage of positions of power. Like if you grew up with that mindset that you want to influence people according to the person you are and stuff. People, those type of characters will want to be in positions of power. So you have to be kind of
Absolutely.
vigilant that you don't just gift important roles within the community to characters
Yeah,
like
definitely.
that. But then essentially it's about being self-aware and just being mindful of
And
that.
the thing is with
But
the nef specifically,
yeah,
sorry,
sorry.
is that it doesn't activate until you get that position of power sometimes. Someone who could be very, well-minded, very well-intentioned, with qualifications, things like that. That position of power could just potentially create like an egomaniac just because like, okay, hey, I have power now. It kind of just like activates in your head that you have a position of authority in the community. So I think holding people accountable is really important. That's something that we've really lacked at doing as Muslims in within our institutions, as well. Through constant evaluation as well. We think like, I mean, a lot of times someone will just get the job and then they'll hold on to it for 25 years, but like they've been a terrible person and doing a terrible job at it, right? Um, so I think just making sure that we're, looking for these context clues of who could possibly be like this very nefs driven person where they're really just seeking to fuel their own ego and, making sure that we're holding those people accountable.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree. We're actually sort of hitting the end of the episode, but to sort of wrap up the podcast, we usually ask this, we always ask this question to all our guests. So if you had to sort of chill with three people in a cave, because boys in the cave essentially, who would they be? They can be alive or they could be dead. Obviously, if they're dead now, they'll be alive in the cave with you talking, because that'd be awkward if they're just dead and in the cave. But anyways, it can be yeah, past and present, and you can pick the three, but it can't be Sahaba or Rasul
I
Sallam,
was,
because we'll just assume they're
I
already
was, I
there,
was gonna ask
because
if
everyone's just gonna pick. Yeah, exactly. So we'll make it a bit harder. So who would your three people be? And they can be non-Muslims as well. We'll be a bit lenient in the cave, because it could be an intellectual sort of dialogue as well.
that's a great question. To chill in a cave, are we like trapped there, like the story of the cave, or like, or we're just
Actually, I haven't thought this deeper.
because I mean, like, it's a different if it's a different
Um,
scenario if it's like a social gathering versus a survivalist experience, But
no, that's true. Yeah, definitely more social side. Like they all want to be there. There's probably like a fridge and a sofa and good lighting, and you can have a nice convo and chill out. Yeah.
if I had to pick, I would pick Malcolm X, rahimahullah, for sure. Um, Hakeem Olajuwon, he's a famous basketball player, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've
He
heard of
actually,
him. He fasted during like
yeah, he played.
Ramadan
He
and stuff.
played
While
while
he
he
played
was
basketball,
fasting.
if I recall. Yeah.
He's a legend. He's one of the greatest players of all time, and he actually like went back. He like went to go live in Jordan to study for a long time too. So like he has like yeah,
Oh,
so he
really? I
has
didn't
like a
actually know this.
traditional
Wow.
kind of background or experience at least, and
Wow, I
yeah,
had no idea.
definitely.
I know he said he won awards, and that was only during the times he fasted. Like he won his most awards when it comes to playing basketball
He would
during the
he
month
like
of Ramadan or something.
his best statistical month like ever was during Ramadan. Like those games that he was playing, like he was just like
SubhanAllah.
on another level. And like it was during the time, like he was still fasting during that time as well. Like he'd have to break his fast at like halftime or something like that. But yeah, it was like he had like his best like statistical like stretch during Ramadan, and it was pretty crazy to see that. And it's actually cool because he actually grew up not very religious. And then even well into his career, he was a little bit not practicing, but then he kind of switched like his he started practicing more and started becoming like more and more calm and more like, you know, patient with himself and his teammates. And then that's when he started becoming like one of the greatest players of all time. Sorry, it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's really interesting. Yeah.
No, it's good. No, mashallah, it's very insightful.
My last pick, man, there's so many great people, mashallah. I'd probably pick one of my local teachers. He's a very good conversationalist. Sheikh Omar Tawil, good friend of mine. And I think I'm more of a listener. Like whenever I'm in a group setting, I don't really talk much. A lot of times, a lot of the things I've learned have been through conversation, and being around people who ask really good questions is really important. So I'll pick him as well. But yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, I think I guess it depends on the type of person you are. Like sometimes if you just happen to be the more knowledgeable person in your group, you tend to be the one talking because people will be listening. Whereas like even for me, when I'm in a more amongst people that have way more knowledge than me in the ilmi sense, and also in secular studies, for example, you naturally tend to be the listener, which is probably the best position to be in. Like we know in the Sunnah, it's better to talk less anyway, in the sense that you're understanding, processing information. So alhamdulillah, like that's definitely a good characteristic, a good trait to have in general for anyone.
Definitely, yeah. It's more so my personality. Like even in certain social circles, like I'll just generally be like very like quiet. I like to listen a lot. Even though I've been talking for 2 hours. But managed to do a
2-hour episode, alhamdulillah.
But alhamdulillah, you guys ask good questions, and you guys give a lot of good conversations. So it's really nice to be here.
But yeah, jazakallah khair for coming on our show. It was really a good conversation. It was more like laid back, but it was just getting into the crux of issues, and that's why like Ibrahim actually hooked me up with you, and I didn't know you specific. Actually, I knew of you, but I knew traversing tradition pretty well. So I'm like, I had to definitely get you on because like I feel that we're sort of cut from a similar cloth in the sense of how we discuss topics, and would like it would be good to kind of get your perspectives as well. So that's why I really wanted to do this. So jazakallah khair for coming on. And if people wanted to like, I don't know, link up with you or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
You mentioned my Twitter earlier, so my Twitter account at Chuhaka is a way, I guess, that you can do that.
I'll put in the show notes, inshallah.
Yeah, for sure. But as well, like read traversingtradition.com. Follow us on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm not really producing that much content basically, but that's really, I think the project is really taking off. I'm very happy about it and very excited about its future. So if you liked whatever I had to say, just follow us. If you didn't like anything I had to say, just I'm not a writer, so don't worry about that. But
you're covered.
Yeah. That's, I'm not on Instagram or anything like that. So Twitter is a good way to reach me for whatever reason you ever need to reach me. But yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, we'll pull the links to the show notes. So yeah, jazakallah khair. Again, and I hope inshallah we'll link up in the future.
Of course,
I'll wrap it up
if I'm ever in Sydney, I'll hit you guys up.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, yeah, for sure. Definitely be keen to chill. We'll show you the hot Salafi spots of Sydney, inshallah. And we'll have a good D&M there, inshallah.
And if you find yourself in the 5th largest city in America, you can hit me up anytime.
Yeah, definitely. I would be keen. I'm actually, inshallah, like, because we found, even with our podcasts, most of our listeners are from America and UK as well.
Okay.
We hit the kind of iTunes charts in UK as well. America is a bit full on in the sense that there's a lot of podcasts, so it's hard to kind of go up the rankings.
Yeah, it's a big market nowadays in America.
Yeah. but you do what you do. So essentially, yeah. So we actually have, I think we have more listeners in UK than Australia, to be honest. It's really strange how that kind of worked out.
You guys need to work on your locals, man.
Yeah, I know.
They're missing some
they're
good
too
stuff.
Salafi, you know. There's too Salafi inclined. You gotta, you know, do a different route. But alhamdulillah, like that's why I feel that we're connecting with listeners overseas. So it'd be good to kind of, you know, go down there, meet with the people there that are doing amazing work. So inshallah, you know, I'll definitely hit you up.
Of course.
When I'm, inshallah, in and around America.
love
I've
to
actually
see
got family there as well. I've got a lot of family in. I think what's the lot of Bengalis live in New York? What's that famous? Oh, is that Jackson Heights? That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where my family's at. So you know, you can hit up my family if you happen to be there.
Inshallah.
And I've got a family in Houston, I think.
Yeah, Houston's the second Sharif after Chicago.
Yeah, that's what I've been told. I think Yasser Qadhi had his institute there as well, if I recall.
I think he went to school in Houston, like undergrad, and was like raised there. He lives in Dallas now. So Dallas is like 4 hours north of Houston. Still, it's a fairly large city. There's a lot of Muslims in that city as well. Different cultures though. Actually, like very different cultures, different climates. Even though it's within the same state, Texas, which is extremely massive. But yeah,
alhamdulillah. We'll probably wrap it up there, inshallah. So for our listeners, thank you for listening to our conversation. If you have any questions or queries, feel free to email us at info@boysinthecave.com or find us on Facebook. And you can follow our journey through Instagram, and then also you can give us a follow. Actually, even on we've actually released a new upgraded website, so you can definitely check that out. Just type in boysinthecave.com and let me know what you think. Inshallah, I've spent decent money, so inshallah it's of benefit. If it's not, then it's kind of a waste of money. But anyways, inshallah, positive comments. So from our special guest Zain, myself, and my co-host Josh, we wish you the best. This is Tanzim signing off. Assalamu alaikum.